season exceeded expectations. Most people eagerly awaited for this season because of the much-awaited Season 2 of Demon Slayer, but if you were to look past the sequels and such, you'll see that we got a surprisingly loaded roster. Now that the season's almost over, I'd like to give those new shows some shine. If you're one of those people who wait until a season's over before picking up a title, you can check to see if one of these shows catches your attention. I'll be ranking these shows according to what I think are the new shows I had the most fun with, but it's not a strict ranking by any means. Our tastes are obviously going to differ, and this is a very subjective ranking based on trying to weigh my enjoyment and actual show quality, so you could end up finding your gem of the season early on the list. Way to start a list with an isekai, right? However, the Faraway Paladin's not your typical run-of-the-mill addition to the genre. Come on, how often do we see an isekai focusing more on the growth of the main character, being raised by undead parents to boot? By this time, I think you've already got an image of what the Faraway Paladin prides itself on. As an isekai, it follows a hero's journey, but its strongest appeal comes in its world building. How did the story come about? How is our boy trained and how does he grow? Compared to a lot of isekai that focus on the feats of the protagonist and wowing us by making him mow down thousands of enemies in one fell stroke, the Faraway Paladin takes things much more slowly and deliberately. Make no mistake though, our protagonist Maryblood can be quite the badass and edgy hero and all, but the focus of the story is on character and setting instead of simply showing off Maryblood's feats and telling the audience to bask in the glory of our overpowered isekai protagonist. It's an isekai that aims to capture the adventure and exploration, and so far, I think it does a damn good job at it. At number 9 is Meruko-chan. Now here's a combination we don't see too often. Slice of life and the spooky horror elements don't seem to mix well, but Maruko-chan proves that wrong. To be fair though, Maruko-chan for the most part feels like a standard slice of life but with the creepy. Still, it's not horrifying, and in fact it's quite funny and even heartwarming at times. I know at this point the show's garnered a reputation for the fan service, but I don't think that detracts too much from the show. As I said, the show's intent on keeping the audience entertained through the situation it puts poor Miko through, and that's the mindset you have to keep in mind here. There's not much spite with how Miko gets scared and is forced to hold back, and the show generally has the moderately upbeat tone to it if you ignore the creepy ghosts, some that are drawn with such grotesque detail that they wouldn't appear lost in an actual horror anime. I recommend this if you're up for a slice of life with a unique theme and some surprisingly wholesome elements. 8th on the list is My Senpai is Annoying. I mentioned how Miruko-chan is surprisingly wholesome in some parts, and I think the same can be doubly said for this next title. My Senpai is Annoying is a very misleading title because when you look at it, the titular Senpai Takeda is probably one of the best bros you can have. Yeah, sure, he teases our protagonist Igarashi a lot. He's a very nice and supportive guy with a heart of gold though. The title's garnered quite a bit of a following thanks to its great blending of romance and comedy, as well as a supporting cast that will keep you coming back for more. But of course, the main draw is the developing romance between Igarashi and Takeda, and it's truly a joy seeing how our protagonist starts coming to terms with her feelings. There are many comparisons to be made with shows like Wotakoi, and like Wotakoi, My Senpai is Annoying is a great slice of life all around. It's got a nice and vibrant supporting cast to keep you entertained, it's got some very relatable moments, and when it comes to the relationship between Igarashi and Takeda, it's very sweet and funny. Blue Period comes in at number 7. Frankly, I like these kind of shows. Every so often you have these kinds of dramatic shows that deal with the struggle of pursuing a craft. When I was starting out with watching seasonal anime, Bakuman was one of my favourites because it just felt so inspiring. Doubly so because I'm quite interested in manga despite being quite the frustrated artist. Luckily, Blue Period's here to bring back that magic but with a different execution. Compared to a lot of shows that deal with the honing of a craft, Blue Period mostly does away with focusing on the shonen stakes. For me, Blue Period seems to be more inward facing if you get it. Its main draw for me isn't the art itself or educating on the world of manga publications like Bakuman did. It's more focused on our protagonist and how he overcomes his doubts and deals with his inexplicable focus on art. That much is evident with the more low-key nature of our hero compared to shonen peers. If you're finding yourself the type of person with low self-esteem but are interested in art, you should definitely give this one a shot. The protagonist would be very relatable and it would inspire you in more grounded ways that the typical shonen sports anime wouldn't. The show does drop a few places though due to an uninspired adaptation, especially when it comes to art and animation, which is kind of ironic, isn't it, don't you think?
俺の心臓は今動き出したみたいだ。
World's Finest Assassin is 6th on the list. This is a show that I was so excited for coming into the season. The season started, I revved up and watched the first episode, and I wasn't disappointed at all. To be honest, I didn't expect the show to even pick up momentum considering that at first glance, it's not too unique. It's an isekai with an overpowered protagonist, strong anti-hero vibes, and a harem. Oh, and the guy behind Redo of Healer is also responsible for this one. That's not really the formula for a stellar reputation now, is it? But World's Finest Assassin overcame the odds and captured the hearts of many anime fans. People often rave about the opening that everyone seems to love, but moving past that, World's Finest Assassin manages to execute its isekai tropes well, throwing in some subversions along the way. For starters, our protagonist wasn't some perverted NEET in his previous life, so no Mushoku Tensei controversies for you there. Second, it's also got an unexpectedly intricate world with its magic systems, and it's in here that we can see the various creative applications that fans of magic systems have often wanted. Our protagonist is actually competent and doesn't just brute force his way through everything, and while he does get his mandatory harem, the girls are all appealing, and given Lug's history in his previous life, the charisma he exudes to attract them is justified. If you're up for a power fantasy that's so much better than what you'd expect, then make sure you try this one out. Like Battle Royale stories? Like the mind games and the cerebral aspects that you can often expect from such titles? Enjoy seeing the real world intertwine with the supernatural world of angels and spirits? Platinum End is probably the title that you're looking for this season. I want to make this clear from the get-go. This is not a second Death Note. Despite coming from the brains that gave us Death Note, Platinum End ends up being more like the future diary than anything the duo have done before. Platinum End is an edge fest of magnificent proportions. It's quite predictable with its tropes, but that doesn't mean it's not entertaining. I had a great time watching everything unfold, and the fan service and the outlandish fights have their charm. Yes, by a lot of measures, Platinum End can be seen as a train wreck, but for me to place this high, I'd say that it's because it's a damn entertaining one at that. It won't blow your minds like Death Note, nor be a trigger of inspiration like Bakuman, but I never found myself bored watching this thing. It juggles the brute nature of Battle Royale anime with some pseudo-intellectual elements from psychology and philosophy to create a rather immersive show that refused to let me go. Speaking of wanton destruction, Takt of Destiny is 4th on the list. Visually, this is the anime among the list that quickly stood out in a massive way. Well, that is to be expected when you've got an action anime handled by both Madhouse and Mappa. Still, from the get-go, Takt Op could have faltered into a mediocre cash grab to serve as a commercial for an ambitious mixed media project led by a gacha game with its gimmick being tied to classical music. But it's not. As a standalone anime, Takt Op Destiny manages to stand on its feet and to be a joy to watch. While it's quick to focus on the eye-popping animation, I'd also like to appreciate the way its story was developed. Admittedly, it's not the most original title out there, but execution is king, and thanks to the banter and the chemistry between the characters as well as the cool fights, I found myself enjoying this one so much. Not to mention, it also got me interested in classical music too, actually. Takt Op Destiny really reminds me of Vivi, and that show is one of the biggest sleeper hits of its season, possibly of the year in fact. In the end, Takt Op Destiny proved gacha game adaptation doubters wrong. It's not anime of the season by any means, but when you look at the hit or miss nature of gacha game adaptations, this one sits nicely along with the likes of Princess Connect, Redive, and FGO Babylonia as some of the better ones. Here's a surprise entry now, Super Crooks. I know some of you have been craving for the Western Great Pretender-esque aesthetic, and the anime gods have gifted you with Super Crooks. Releasing midway through the season, Super Crooks caught everyone off guard. I certainly didn't see its impact coming from my pre-season look, but it ended up being one of the better ones the season had to offer. The first thing that stands out for Super Crooks is the aesthetic. It looks like an anime version of a Hollywood movie, giving off that whole Western superhero vibe if you were to ask me. Past that, I think the Super Crooks handles itself rather well by giving us characters to empathize with. There are film conveniences every now and then, but it hardly detracts from the enjoyment I had when I was watching it. Super Crooks is easy to follow, it's enjoyable, and could be a gateway for people into the whole anime thing. For those who want anime but still harbour a strong love for Western stories, perhaps Super Crooks will be the show to satisfy you as it treads the boundary of both mediums and definitely makes it work. For our runner-up, we have Gomi-san.
すごい美人だ。さすが進学校。ビバ進学校。
Entering the season, Gomi-san was one of the most anticipated anime. As the season went on, let's just say that it had more than lived up to the expectations and the hype that everyone had for it. Among the titles we have now, it's safe to say that Gomi-san is probably the most readily recommendable show out of all of them. This is a show that can be enjoyed by everyone, and it's one of the best ones that you can open and unwind to after a long day. Now, at first glance, Gomi-san seems like a typical slice of life. We've seen a lot of those, but I think that among the SOLs we have, I think it's the third on our list in fact, Gomi-san has the most charming characters. They're all really quirky and memorable in their interactions, and that's something that the genre has to lean on to make up for the lack of an overarching plot. It's full of funny moments where these characters can shine in, and the production value is excellent overall. Could it be not to everyone's fancy? Well, probably, especially if you're looking for high-stake plots that make you think about life. However, even people outside of its target market could surely find something to like in the charming world and characters of Gomi-san. So for this season, our best new anime is Ranking of Kings. Now, this really did come out of nowhere. Ranking of Kings is a show that had to overcome insurmountable odds. It was a latecomer to the party, debuting midway through October. It also didn't have the most attractive and eye-catching art for an anime, typically speaking. I mean, the thing looks like a children's show. Even the premise doesn't even sound that gripping. Deaf and mute child wanting to be a king goes on a journey with a shadow friend. But boy, the show did pick up and make a believer out of everyone once the ball got rolling. What I especially love about this anime is the sheer amount of depth it contains in its characters and world. And no, I don't mean depth as in high-sounding science or philosophical babbling that you often see in stuff like Mahoka. What I mean are the actual depth of the characters and their sides that the viewers will enjoy uncovering as you wade through the thrilling episodes. You can really feel that you're in it with the characters on their journey and explorations as you learn more about the world they're in. The show's exciting not because of its UFO table tier fights, but because there's always something new to be learnt. Ranking of Kings still has more than a dozen episodes left in it, but if this goes on, I'm pretty sure that this will be one unforgettable anime. If you're on the fence about giving it a shot, let me tell you, do yourself a favor and watch what I will nominate as Anime of the Season. How is that for a shocking finish? Coming into the season, did you see Ranking of Kings being one of the best titles? I mean, I didn't, and I'd love to know what you thought of it when you first saw it. Be sure to also check out my other videos and you might find something you like. Memberships will open access to more videos, so you might want to consider that too. Otherwise, helping me on Patreon, which is in the description box, will allow me to make even better videos next time for you. I hope you had fun today, because I sure as hell did. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.